Hi, this is Eric from Longbox Review at longboxreview.wordpress.com. Welcome to the show. So I just got back from a trip to the Seattle, Washington, Portland, Oregon area. It was a trip more for my wife and younger daughter and our granddaughters who went with us. They wanted to go to a couple concerts that were over in Seattle and Portland, so I decided to tag along with them, with the plan of stopping by, a few to several comic book shops that I've been wanting to stop by for quite some time now. When I was in Emerald City Comic Con last March, I had decided that there was a half a day where we were going to be there before the con, and then the day after the con ended where we could spend some time, my wife and I, because she likes to tag along with me to these things because she knows it makes me happy. She's a good wife that way, and I love her for that. But anyway, we were going to stop by a few comic shops there, but unfortunately we never made it for various reasons. We got in late that first day, and then the second day we were so tired from the con. It was a good tired, but still very tired, and all I wanted to do was get back on the road and get home. Plus, the shop wasn't going to open till 11, which meant, we wouldn't be home until early evening to late evening, depending on how long we took for breaks along the way. And then several months later, we were over in the Seattle area to go to the Aerosmith concert that was happening. And I again wanted to stop by a few comic book shops. And I did stop by a couple of them, but there was a few more that I didn't get to. So I thought, okay, well, I will do this the next time we're in the area, which I knew would be now. And so I made plans, along with my wife, that we would do that. So flash forward to, or I guess flash back to now that I'm talking about it in the past tense, this last weekend, which was the weekend of October 6th and 7th, we're in Seattle on Sunday, having nothing to do until we decide we want to head down to Portland for the day and then go to the next concert. But anyway, in Seattle on Sunday, and we went to the first shop on my list, which was Zanadu Comics. And I'd heard, when I'd asked before back in late February when I was getting ready to go to the Emerald City or I guess it was in early March, because Emerald City last time was in late March. This time coming up in a few months, it's in early March. I always get those things confused. Anyway, in preparation to go to the Emerald City Comic Con last time, I had asked some people online, where should I go? What shops should I hit when I'm there? And Zanadu was on that list. So I go there, and this is the one that's on 3rd Avenue, I believe. And start walking down the street towards it because I see it down the road. And it doesn't, it's not in the best neighborhood, I'll say. It's not, not a bad neighborhood or anything, but things are kind of dingy looking. But I expect that. It's a city. Some parts are, more clean than others. No big deal. But across the street, start walking down the road there to get to the shop, and I'm suddenly hit by the smell of urine, which is by this parking area next to the building in which Xanadu resides. And that's not a great way to start off a visit. But, again, it's a city. I understand that. These things happen. They exist. They are what they are. But, man, I just as a side note, that was the first bit of it. And then we were at Pike Place Market near that area. We use this public elevator. And while we were standing there waiting for the elevator, the entire area around us that's reeks of urine. That's all I can smell, and I had enough of urine by that time, and I should stop talking about it now. Anyway, go into Xanadu, and the first thing I'm hit with impression wise is that there's a ton of figures and statues all around, which is really cool because there's some really nice ones. There were a few Superman statues that I would love to get my hands on. I show them to my wife, which is always kind of a mixed bag because she will buy those things for me, no matter how much they cost. And that's the problem. She will buy those things for me no matter how much they cost. I like my comics and I like my comic book paraphernalia, but I try to be as frugal as possible, and buying some of that stuff is not very frugal. So, I got to be careful of that when I show her these things. But I get so excited about it. I'm like, oh, look at this. Isn't this really cool? I love that. Anyway, so I'm sure she made a mental note, and I might see some of those things in the on a future birthday or Christmas present or something. Anyway, so I see that, and it's kind of weird. You have to walk in the door, take a little right, head down this slight corridor, then you can basically go in a U-shaped pattern where the main part of the store is. And so I walked through everything and looked at everything. They had a bunch of new comics out. They mostly had a lot of trades on the shelves, which was really cool. There's a good selection of trade paperbacks there, and they were all organized kind of in types. The mysteries here, the horrors here, that kind of thing, the superheroes over here, that was neat. But there was no real clear definition or like signage saying, what these were. I mean, you had to actually get up to the bookshelf and see a little tiny card that said horror or something. But that's not that big of a deal to me. It's just, I'm just thinking in terms of, someone new, probably not, someone new to the hobby, perhaps, or someone, a loved one who knows that their significant other is into comics, so they go into the shop and like, well, I know he or she likes, such and such. Where can they look without having to ask? And that was the other thing. So I walk in, and there was a person working there, and at the moment I walked in with my family. So my wife, my younger daughter, and my two grandkids also came with me to the shop. Because we were just kind of walking around the downtown area together. But we walked in, and there was only one other person in the store at the time, and they were the person working there was talking with this person, and then that person left, and then just left me and my family, and that the staff workers said nothing at all to us, except when my wife very nicely asked if there was a bathroom nearby, if the person knew if there was a bathroom nearby, because my granddaughters really needed to go to the bathroom. And the person was really, really nice. I don't know how much you know about the Seattle downtown area, but there are signs everywhere, no public restrooms, no public restrooms. And we had seen those while we were there, so we did not expect that they would let us use their own bathroom. But they did. That the person was really nice about that, and so that happened. Anyway, so while my wife is taking the grandkids to the bathroom, my daughter and I are just kind of walking around looking at stuff, and still nothing. How can I help you? Are you looking for something in particular? Which I'm normally okay with, because I just like to look around at the shops. I may not always have something in mind that I'm looking for, and I just kind of want to see what they have, how it's arranged, what the quality is, that kind of stuff. So I was okay with that, except again, I'm thinking in terms of, what if it's a new person coming in? You shouldn't be ignored like that. So I offer that only as a suggestion to any comic book shop people that may be listening, perhaps. Take care of your customers. And I ended up not buying anything there, but I do now regret that, because as I was looking at one part of the store, they had a bunch of comics on this rack where they were like older comics. They were like $2.50 each. I think that's what it was. And there was one Supergirl issue from, I believe it was like the mid, maybe late 80s, when Kara was still Supergirl. Anyway, it said guest starring New Teen Titans on the top of the issue, and man, I should have bought that, because I haven't really done this. I want to buy appearances of the New Teen Titans in other comics, and here was an opportunity there, and I didn't do it, and I don't know why. If you're not from Seattle, or maybe if you are from Seattle and you've never gone there, you should check out Zanadu Comics. It was a good looking store, at least for the merchandise that was there. And who knows? Maybe I caught the staff person. They were busy doing something, and that that's why I was not acknowledged. But again, like I said, it's not that big of a deal to me. So, like I said, I had plans to go to several other comic book shops. Well, unfortunately, just as it seems to happen, and I don't know why this is, I think maybe I just need to go to the Seattle, Portland area for the sole purpose of going to these comic shops because, like I said, we were walking around the downtown area, went to Pike Place Market, and then down to the wharf area, to the piers to do some things, and, the time was up. We had no more time. It took longer than we expected to walk to these places. And, the next day, we got up late and we had to get down to Portland, which takes about 3 hours. So I didn't make it to any more shops in the Seattle area. But then, like I said, we were going to go down to Portland and then we were going to stop by Excalibur Comics. That was my plan in Portland because I heard that was a good place to stop by there. Anyway, like I said, we ended up taking too long getting out of Seattle, and by the time we got down to Portland, that would only give us a couple hours to get to the hotel, to go find a restaurant, to have dinner before they went to the next concert that they decided they wanted to go to. That was in Portland. So I just told them, no, forget it. Just skip it. We'll be back in this area again, I'm sure. My wife and daughter likes to go to concerts. And now that the grandchildren are getting older, my wife is now passing on that thing that she loves to do, which is go to concerts, to them as she did with our younger daughter. So, and that's fine. So we'll be back there again. So I'm sure I will visit some other comic shops in the future. And maybe when I go to, I say this now with hopeful intentions, when we go to Emerald City Comic Con this year, 90% sure that we're going to do that. Still trying to decide on the cost and where we're going to stay and all that. But anyway, we'll see how that goes. I'm sure it'll be like last year where, you go to a con, and if you've never been to a con, one, you should go. And two, you should realize that it sucks out all of your time from your day, in a good way, a pleasant way, if you're a comic book fan. But it leaves little time or no time really to do anything else besides go to the con, spend lots of money, eat really fast, sleep like you're dead until you get up early the next morning and do it all over again. And you do this for 2 or 3 days depending on the con. So that was my Seattle Portland comic shop experience. Unfortunately, it wasn't as good or as extensive as I had wanted, but there you go. That's what happens when you do these things. But while I was heading out to the Seattle Portland area, I decided that I would take along the last 2 weeks of September comics that I had purchased with me so that I could get a jump on my reading. But yet again, I don't know how this happened. So I take 2 weeks worth of comics, which is, a stack that's probably about, I don't know how many they were offhand. I'd have to count them, and I'm not going to do that right now. But, it was a good 6 to 8 inches if you stack them, top to bottom. And, roughly in half, so I have 3 to 4 inches worth of comics. Comics by the inches. That's how shops should sell them, right? Anyway, so I ended up reading some on the way out to Seattle, and then I ended up finishing them in the hotel room in Portland, but only 1 week's worth. I did not get to the second week's worth. In fact, I have them on my desk right now as I'm recording. I'm looking at them longingly because I want to read those. I did cheat. I did read. I was flipping through them looking for something in particular. I won't go into detail about that. But I ended up, for some reason, I glommed onto Star Trek number 13 for that second batch of comics. And wow, what I wasn't planning on talking about this on this episode, but what a really good comic. Mike Johnson, who is the writer, has been doing a bang-up job with the stories in the Star Trek comic from IDW. I really, really enjoyed that particular issue. If you are familiar with the Star Trek movie from J.J. Abrams, there's this one character, a red shirt, nicknamed Cupcake by Kirk in the movie, and Kirk has a couple run-ins with this character. Well, this story is from that character's perspective. It's kind of like I'm going to date myself now with some of you listeners, I'm sure, but there was a show called MASH on in the 70s, and one of the oft-repeated plot devices of the show was writing letters back home, and then one of the main characters would write a letter back to their wife or their father or their mother or whatever, and then they would relate the events that unfolded during the course of that episode. And that that's a tool that wasn't just MASH. I mean, other shows have done that over the years. I just remember MASH in particular used that quite a few times. And that's the premise of this story too. Is that Cupcake, the red shirt Cupcake, is writing a letter to his mom and dad back home, and relating some events that have occurred over the course of several weeks or so. And it was just a really good story. I really enjoyed it. The whole Star Trek series has been a very pleasant surprise. So if you're a fan of Star Trek and you're not reading this, you're kind of missing out. Anyway, so that's just a sneak peek, I guess, if you want, for lack of a better phrase, at the week 2 comics that I'm about to read. But what I was going to talk about today are 3 of the 3 to 4 inch stack of comics that I read for that 1 week, because I really enjoyed them for various reasons. The first one is Aquaman number 0. So you get, and these 3, I think, well, 2 of the 3 really exemplify what I thought the 0 issues were supposed to be about, or should be about, which is to give us an origin story that we don't already know about for the New 52, the DC New Universe characters, to fill in the gaps, or at least start that story, start telling that story of who they are, where they've come from, what they're about. And so Aquaman number 0, starts out 6 years ago, and I don't even want to get into the whole timeline thing. I really wish DC editorial would get their act together and have all the writers and the editors and just get into a room and hash this out before they publish this stuff, because it's as has been reported, and I think I've tweeted about it too, with the Batman stuff and the various Robins and how these 0 issues have unfolded. Some of these timelines, they don't work very well. But you know what? No big deal. It's comics. I'm willing to overlook that, but I really wish they would just get it straight and even make things more ambiguous time-wise. Don't say 6 years ago. Just say. Don't even say anything. We know it's in the past. It's no big deal. Anyway, that's my little rant. But we get the story of Arthur. It starts off with and spoilers if you haven't read them. I'm sure you have, since my comics are 2 weeks late always, at least 2 weeks late. So no big deal there, I hope. But Arthur's human father dies, and he doesn't feel like he belongs, so he goes to the ocean. Encounters a shark and realizes that he can command the creatures of the sea, and then ends up saving some people. So there's the hero aspect of it. Wonderfully told by Jeff Johns and the artists Yvonne Hayes and Joe Prado. It's just a lovely looking superhero comic. I love it. But during the course of this, the character of Volko shows up, who was an aide to Arthur's mother, the Queen. And so he fills Arthur in on a bunch of stuff regarding his past and why Volko's in hiding. Has to do with Arthur's half-brother. And the issue ends with Volko taking Arthur to Atlantis. And that is the end of the story. I really, really very much wanted to read part 2 of this, and I hope that comes up in a future storyline. I'm sure it will, with Jeff Johns doing this, but it just made me want to read more. I want to see that next chapter to this. And like I said, wonderfully illustrated by the artistic team. So good read there. And then the next two I want to talk about briefly are Batman Comics, Batman Incorporated, and then Batman the Dark Knight. So Batman Incorporated, written by Grant Morrison and Chris Burnham with art by Fraser Irving. And, right there, you got to win as far as I'm concerned with Fraser Irving on the art. There's something about his art that just really, really appeals to me. I love it. I can't wait to see his stuff in anything. It doesn't have to be Batman. It could be anything. So there's that. But mostly what I enjoyed about this is the writing, is the dialogue here, the little jokes that Morrison and Burnham are throwing in here. There's at one point, Knight, the Batman of England, talks about relocating his and Squire's headquarters inside a post box because he's asking about Batman's shrink ray. Supposedly Batman has a shrink ray, and that comes up a few times in the comic. It becomes a little joke there, but he basically Knight is referencing a TARDIS, which I thought was just funny as hell. And then there's the shrink ray joke, so that shows up there. And then the Batman of Japan also mentions having access to the shrink ray, and then Batman responds with, "Don't make me change my mind," about him becoming part of Batman Incorporated. So that, little Batman humor there, dry Batman humor. And then there's the, just the little bits, like the villain that the Batman of Japan, whose name I don't think is mentioned in here, and I don't recall what it is, but there's this character that is jumping around with these lines coming out of his hand, kind of like webbing. So it kind of looks like Venom or Carnage to some degree, but he's called Vaniac, which so those are presumably his veins that he's thwipping out there to get away from the Batman of Japan. Just little things like that. The Man of Bats and Raven, the Batman of I believe the West or Southwest, or Batman of the Prairie. I don't remember how they refer to him, but just playing up that cultural side of that character. I really enjoyed that, although I'm a little hesitant to say that because I don't know enough about the culture really to say. But at one point, I wondered if Morrison is perhaps delving a little too far into the racist territory. I'm not sure, but there was just this one panel, not racist, but stereotyping these Native American characters in a certain way. I'm not sure about that, so I'm going to err on the side of caution, I think, and unless I find out differently, that I think they went a little too far with that. But if anybody else knows, if you read this issue and you have more information about this, let me know, because I'm really curious. I feel nervous about this just because I enjoyed it as the comedic aspects of it, but I have a feeling I shouldn't be enjoying it, and I'm just not sure. And then finally, there is, during the course of the story, the Batman of Australia, who was the sidekick to the previous Batman of Australia. He's basically called up to replace his former mentor, and in doing so, he starts to develop a relationship with Squire, the Robin of, I guess, presumably of England, and Alfred is in the Batcave with Bruce and talking about how these two characters have been practically inseparable on Skype, and Alfred says, "I must admit I'd rather overlooked the potential of Batman Incorporated as a dating service." To which Bruce basically ignores it, the comment. But it's droll Alfred. I love droll Alfred. So it was a nice story. I liked how it ended too. It was good, and like I said, Fraser Irving art. Hey, I'm on board no matter what. So excellent stuff. And then finally, I have Batman the Dark Knight #0. Now, I don't read Batman the Dark Knight. I read the first storyline of the pre-New pre-New 52, that title, and promptly dropped it, and then I never picked it up on the relaunch. But for some reason, I think because of the solicitation for this issue, I had a feeling that I would get that origin story that I was longing for in these Zero issues. So I got that, and that's what I got here. I got a really good story about Bruce and dealing with his parents' death, and ultimately, just thinking about what a important man his father was. Therefore, somebody wanted him dead, and that's what happened here. And he has conversations with people in the Wayne businesses that further that outlook. So there's a scene where he's in college and he's taking notes and drawing. He's basically drawing these lines from his parents to presumably who might want them to be killed. So he's continuing that on through his young adulthood. I'll jump back real quick. One of the things that was kind of nice in this comic is that they bring back the pearls, the imagery of the pearls, the falling pearls that I believe Frank Miller did in The Dark Knight, that imagery. So they kind of bring that back to more or less an effective use. It's probably a little overdone. I like that imagery, of the string of pearls dropping, as his mother is killed. Not that I think it's great that some kid's mother is killed, but that imagery here really works as far as the entire Batman mythos, right? But it can only really work if it's used sparingly, and I think they overdid it just a little bit in this one. But it was nice to see that the shades of Frank Miller in here, to continue that on. And then so you have the pearls, but then his father's watch comes into this, which is a classic storytelling device. A watch gets passed down from father to son, and what that signifies. Bruce ends up losing it to some vagrant who was a witness to the murder, but he won't tell he won't tell Bruce anything, but ends up taking Bruce's dad's watch, which is that would be a huge blow to him. And then we get further on in the story. Oh, I forgot to mention, while Bruce is thinking about his parents and why they were killed. One of the things, speaking of literary touches, one of the things that is brought up by Bruce, and this is written by Greg Hurwitz, and like I said, one of the literary things that are brought up is a comparison of Thomas Wayne to Atticus Finch, which I really appreciated that. If you don't know who Atticus Finch is, you should go read To Kill a Mockingbird. And that's all I'll say about it. One of the best books I have ever read in my entire life. There's no excuse for anyone not reading that book. So there you go. That's my challenge. Go read To Kill a Mockingbird, then come back and read some comics. So anyway, the conspiracy really is the driving factor in Bruce's life as he's going to college and he's training physically and mentally to, of course, ultimately become Batman. But he comes back after having been away at college, and he goes and finds that vagrant many years later, who, interestingly enough, is still in the same area. It seems kind of improbable that the guy would still be there 10 years later, 10-ish or so years later. Anyway, but I'm willing to forgive that part of the story. It's a nice plot furthering device. Anyway, what I found really interesting though was when Bruce confronts this guy, he says, "If I need to hurt you, I will." And of course, the guy gives up the name of Bruce's parents' murderer, Joe Chill, and then Bruce says, basically, "Give me my watch back." But really, what struck me was, "If I need to hurt you, I will." And we all know Batman is able to get information out of criminals, and they never really show it, one, and two, I don't think we as fans really think about it. We just kind of accept it, that Batman has such a reputation that people just give up information. And while that may be true with some criminals that Batman encounters, I think really that a lot of the criminals would not do that. And he would have to resort to various means to get this information, whether it's using drugs or just physical torture. And that's really the only word for it here. I really think that Batman would have to, if you think about it in a logical and, I'm going to put this word in air quotes, realistic approach, the guy would have to basically torture the criminals, his victims, into giving up that information. And here we see the beginnings of that, I think. Just the thought, the idea that Bruce Wayne, Batman, is willing to kick the shit out of you, pardon me, to get what he needs to get on to the next thing. And I thought that was a really, it's kind of refreshing in a way to see that the fact that Bruce doesn't do this stuff reticently. The Batman would have to embrace that side of the job, the physical nature of it, the pain, the fighting, that goes along with that. He'd have to do it that way to get things done. And I found it refreshing that we kind of get that a little bit here. And it's not to say that I want to see all Batman comics reflect on the nature of violence and how that's bad or good for Batman or whatever. It's just, it was an interesting side that I hadn't seen before, really explored, and it's not really explored here, but there's a touch of it. Although in the next scene, after he confronts the guy in the alley, he goes looking for Joe Chill, and basically the next page, almost a whole page is him showing his fighting skills at this point against a bunch of biker dudes in a bar. And he's quite willing to bust heads and break noses and other things to get what he needs. So I like that look. This is somewhat different look, and of course he confronts Joe Chill, and which was interesting to me, having read a lot of Batman comics over the last 30 plus years. When I got into comics, Joe Chill was the guy who killed his parents, and this is from Joe Chill is from the Golden Age. He first appeared in 1939 in Detective Comics 33, named in 1948 though in Batman number 47, and that's the story where Joe Chill is confronted by Batman reveals who he is. Joe Chill runs off to his henchman and says, I killed Batman's parents, and now he's after me. And of course they gun him down, bang, 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 and without Joe Chill having conveniently telling them, who Batman really is. So Joe Chill's been around for a very long time as a character in the Batman mythos. There was a point I know this is somewhat of a tangent, but I found it interesting. But there was a point where DC decided that Batman should not have confronted his parents' murderer, so they wrote that out, and that happened in the 0 Hour storyline in 1994. But then they brought Joe Chill back after 2006's Infinite Crisis. Wow, I almost crossed companies there when I said Infinity. But this is, and I'm looking at Wikipedia here, and apparently there was a Joe Chill story that Grant Morrison did in 2008, which I have not read, but I kind of want to go find that trade paperback now and read that. Anyway, but this is the first time I've seen Joe Chill in the new 52 universe, even the post Infinite Crisis universe. So I find it interesting. Joe Chill is back. He is the murderer of of Bruce's parents, but there is no grand conspiracy, at least as far as this story goes. Joe Chill just needed money. It was just a random crime where Bruce and his parents were victims. So what does that do for Bruce? I like that that idea that it's just this random crime. It can happen to anybody. So it gives a certain amount of motivation to Batman, or to Bruce, to become Batman, to combat that kind of out of the blue crime. The idea that it can happen to anyone, and Batman is there to help prevent that, to help prevent any other kid or loved one from losing someone close to them. So I think that's a great way to continue the mythos of Batman and Joe Chill and what all that means. So anyway, so those are 3 zero issues. I just happen to be zero issues. I mean, I read a bunch of other comics that are good too. Just for some reason, those 3 really spoke to me. And there you go. There's one more thing I just wanted to mention real quick, and I'm gonna borrow a bit of Bill Maher's shtick. He does these things called new rules, if you're familiar with his show. And so I want to do a new rule, and the new rule is this: can we stop with the Twitter wars? I just saw earlier today. This is today being October 10th. So it was sometime this morning when I read this. Maybe it happened last night, but I read it this morning. So, there's this thing going on between Tom Spurgeon and Kurt Busiek. And, while we need to have, if someone disagrees with you or you're being an ass, and I'm not saying one is an ass over the other. I'm just saying that I guess I'm just tired of seeing this stuff on Twitter, online. Go do this, and this happened with between Liefeld and a couple other people too. Scott Snyder and then what's the guy from Marvel? I can't remember. I don't remember his name now. Anyway, just this bitter back and forth of you're a jerk, no, you're a jerk, and can we just stop, please? I don't want to see this clogging up my Twitter feed. And of course, well, you say, well, Eric will just unsubscribe, don't follow them. Yes, that's true. But, 140 character posts is not the place to have a long-term argument between 2 or more people. And mostly this comes from, I'm just so sick of seeing I hear there's another word in quotes, air quotes for you, the dark side of comics, but I'm just sick of it. So, knock it off, you guys. Be nice, play nice. Come on, it's just comics. Okay, there you go. I guess I'm done there. Thanks for listening. I appreciate that very much. If you want to get a hold of me, please do so at longboxreview@gmail.com or on Twitter at longboxreview. That's it. Bye.